Thank you, President Kenyatta.
Thank you.
You know, you're actually coming here, as I mentioned this morning, it's a great excuse for me to make a personal advertisement because Banyan Tree is opening its first luxury tented camp in the Masai Mara area. And this morning, you and our senior minister have already agreed to be among our first guests. So I hope that at least I'm setting some example for the rest of my colleagues here to see Kenya as you said, a major gateway to Africa.
Absolutely, and I look forward to that partnership, and I think that's why we're here, to see how we can strengthen these collaborations between
Thank you.
our two countries and our two regions.
Thank you, sir. Well, we have an opportunity here, as you've so kindly consented, to answer questions from people in the room. As you all know, we have the pigeonhole system, so you can either raise your hands if you have a question, and we can direct the microphone to you, or you can ask a question here. I have one question here already, which is to, first of all, thank you for the positive speech and the links between Asia and Africa, but saying that the air links between Asia and Africa are still minimal, and what are the governments of Asia and the airlines, I suppose, of Asia and Africa doing about this, because connectivity is not possible without easier air access?
I think, first and foremost, we have a BASA that we've signed between Kenya and Singapore. And we ourselves are also very keen to see how we can get partnerships between our two airlines. But indeed, as we were discussing yesterday, one of the key things that we're also agreeing on is the fact that we need to make our two regions the hubs that connect our two countries, rather, the hubs that connect our two regions. And what we're looking in particular is to see how we're going to be able to expand that hub and spoke concept in Nairobi with direct links, for example, with Singapore Airlines, where we can have flights flying from Singapore to Nairobi and thereby connecting with the rest of the African continent. What you have said is extraordinarily true, because coming to Singapore today from Nairobi, you either have to go through Dubai down to Singapore, a route that is almost 15 hours, or through London, another route that is almost, again, 20 hours. And yet it is only an 8-hour flight between Nairobi and Singapore. So if we were able to link that route, Singapore, Nairobi, then from Nairobi down to Johannesburg is 4 hours. Across to the West African coast, 5 hours. Nairobi, Singapore, across down to Australia, 4 hours. Across to Japan, another 4 or 5 hours.
Does Kenya always have a
No,
a stop?
this is what now we're saying. We want to develop this stop and then use the spoke from there to link ourselves to the rest of the region, and vice versa for Singapore. Because with that, then we have easier, faster ways of communicating and transporting human beings to do business.
Good. Well, I look forward to that, because then our hotel guests can come from Asia more directly rather than going through elsewhere. A question here now from a question that was in fact asked yesterday of our Deputy Prime Minister also, which is, what needs to change to enable business and political leaders to take long-term actions when they're actually evaluated on a short-term basis?
This is indeed a major problem, because indeed, as you said in your own opening remarks, you've seen how the world has changed over the last 4 years in ways that you least expect. What we are trying to do, for example, within Kenya and, let's say, the greater African region, is to try and create development plans and programs that stretch over a 50-year period, that hopefully are able to live beyond administrations. And when we look at it, there is no fundamental difference in what a developing country is actually looking for. We are all keen on housing, on infrastructure, power generation, as I said, health, manufacturing. There are no major fundamental differences that tear us apart. And this is what we are telling ourselves on the African continent. We need to really come together and be able to have focused and long-term plans that supersede administrations and that supersede borders. Because this is the only way that we can have sustainable development. And this was really the major driving force even behind the Africa Free Trade arrangements. And this is what really inspired a lot of African countries. You know, very few people actually expected that we would get every single African country to sign up to this arrangement in the short space of time that it actually happened, and to actually operationalize it, again, within the short space of time. But there is now a realization that unless we put in place these fundamental blocks that outlive administrations, we're not going to be able to achieve our social economic agenda. So really, it is a question of how do we, as governments, get private sector on board with similar understandings and partner together, therefore, to be able to achieve and to take advantage of the business opportunities that come out of it, but also partner with us, because those business opportunities also lay the foundation for us as governments, as politicians, to achieve the social economic aspirations of our people. So it is a question of how do we tie these two together, and also the recognition today that long-term capital will not be attracted by short-term policies. So it's how to marry those two together.
I think that's a very visionary yet very pragmatic approach that many of us here would certainly be heartened by. I have a question here from someone on a slightly different topic, and it says that the question is that Kenya has been very forward-thinking by supporting the presence of the Global Disability Summit. And the question is, as you continue to build up your major infrastructure, how are you going to ensure the building of an inclusive infrastructure that will efficiently include more citizens into your civil society?
I think the first basis of all of this is connectivity. It's information. An informed society is a free society. And I think that's one of the main reasons why we have really focused on inclusivity in terms of access to information. And Kenya is one of those countries that has really put a lot of investment into our ICT infrastructure backbone. And what has this done? This has enabled people and empowered people through information to know what their rights are, what their obligations are, and it has helped not only democratize, but also help us all focus on the needs of our people. I think the second is education. Through education and enlightenment as well, that also helps create that inclusivity and empowering our people to also be able to take advantage of the opportunities, again, that are available to them. And I think thirdly is the issue of expanding our own health infrastructure, which again creates both opportunities for business, but also at the same time creates equity amongst people. So I think these are the three things that I would really look towards and focus upon.
Thank you. A question here is now from someone who is a company based here and in 20 countries in Africa. And his point is that the fact that you're here as our first ever speaker in the last 6 summits that we've had, or even 7 summits we've had, the first African leader signals very good intentions. But besides this first good start, what do you think will be the greatest obstacle that will come between even closer relations and connectivities and business dealings between Asia and Africa?
I think just mental blockage. The fact that people don't want to, one looks at Africa and it's so far away. It's distant. It is the imagery presented on TV of a continent of darkness, disease, hunger, and poverty, without taking into cognizance the fact that Africa is rapidly transforming into one of the actual fastest growing continents with a very vibrant young population, with a very dynamic new leadership that is actually coming up. So I think it's the mental block based on the visual imaging that our mainstream media presents. I think that's going to be the biggest obstacle. And I'd like to say, because two countries in this region have actually overcome that and taken tremendous advantage of the opportunities that are available, on the African continent, and that's Japan and China. And if you look at the volume of investment from Japan and China into the African continent, it far supersedes. And I think today China is slowly becoming Africa's largest foreign investor, not just in terms of developmental capital, in terms of infrastructure, but also in terms of private capital.
Right.
That's also moving, onto the African continent. So I think really the biggest is this mental block created by the perceptions, of media that prevent people from actually seeing the opportunities, but rather you look at the negative. So it's those that will see those fundamental opportunities.
What are some of the specific BRI initiatives that China has in Kenya? Are there any examples that you can point to?
Well, first and foremost, in terms of infrastructure development, we can talk Kenya. We have worked very closely with them in terms of infrastructural development. But now we are also seeing them moving another stage further. We are now having capital coming in on a PPP basis to also continue that infrastructure build. We're seeing them now participate in our housing market. Again, attracting private capital into Kenya's housing market. They're moving in terms of broadcasting, with Star TV and others who are coming in on a commercial basis and moving in and filling in a gap, again, that was there, and taking advantage of the frequencies that were readily available, but really very underutilized. So these are some of the areas, for example, that China is really targeting. They're looking to see how they can invest in some of our ports, right? As well. Power generation is another area that they're also very keen on.
Right.
So those are just some of the areas, yeah.
What you've just mentioned about mental blockage is certainly right. I think many of us in the room today, including myself, would not have thought, as you mentioned in your speech, that Kenya is actually leading the way in Africa on issues such as fintech, ICT, and so on. We would have probably been sort of captives of mainstream media and portrayed the general stereotype of a relatively undeveloped Africa. But I have here a question from someone who's asked something along the same lines, and it says, the question here is that ICT, mobile cellular, mobile money, banking, and all that are excellent strengths that every successful nation, including Kenya, would have to have them eventually. But they are neither special nor unique attributes by themselves. And the question is, for Kenya in particular, as opposed to other African nations, what is your unique and special comparative advantage to bring forward in your exchange with the rest of Asia?
I think
that requires you to brag a bit about Kenya, of course.
I think number one, Kenya over the years has not been a country blessed with mineral resources. So we have been forced to heavily invest in our people. So I think first and foremost, our strongest point is our people. So we have an educated, well-focused, and entrepreneurial-minded population. That's number one. So our first strength is our people. Our second strength is our strategic location. Kenya is strategically located on the eastern seaboard of the African continent, on the other side of the Indian Ocean, with good connection into the hinterland of Africa, with good links into Europe, and again into Asia. So the strategic location of Kenya, I think, is our second blessing. I think the third is that we have a solid, well-founded, private sector-driven economy that is more service-oriented. And as we now start making major finds, especially in terms of mineral, oil, and gas, you're coming into an economy that is already solidly well-serviced financially, well-serviced in the hotel sector. Thank you for adding another one. That's beautiful. That's well-serviced, so the hospitality industry is well set. The financial services sector is well set. The infrastructure for ICT is well set. And you find a welcoming, private sector-minded, entrepreneurial class of people who are ready to partner with you in your journey into the rest of the African continent.
Thank you, sir. I think we've come to the end of our session, and I certainly hope that this beginning of an Asia-Africa and a Singapore-Kenya relationship can deepen in the years ahead. When I was a student growing up, I was a great admirer of your father, and I think our own Lee Kuan Yew probably knew Jomo Kenyatta
very well.
And I think, as in Singapore's case, the son has done the father proud. And we congratulate you, and we wish you the best in the future ahead. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.